Hey guys, sorry about the issue. It seems like Google really sucks. I have to find a new way of streaming because this doing this really is really painful every time I need to share. So thank you all very much for coming. Not sure if this is working or not. Hopefully, we have people here. So give me a second while we set up. Hey, Phil.
Hey, Kenny.
Oh. You know, I got to find a new way of streaming, my friend, because this Google thing isn't working for me.
Hold on. I got to let my cat in before she breaks down the door. Hold on.
Hey, Rob. Seahawk, how are you? Kate. Hey, Rail. How's it going? Steve. Corkboard TV, how are you? Thank you for coming. So, everybody, thank you all very much for coming here. We're here with Phil, who is PhotoGearFun. So, everybody, thank you all very much for coming. And he's our main speaker. You like that? I like that too. This is actually given to me by Mickey Bunch. So Mickey Bunch, if you hear this, thank you very much. All right, y'all. So for today, we have Phil on here, and he's one of our really good friends here, and he is definitely one of our techie guys.
Sorry, my cat wants to be in the center of attention here. Come on, Suki.
So unapologetically known. How are you? You travel vlogs. Thank you very much. So really quick, the reason for this actual chat, or rather our live here today, is that I kind of went into my email, and there's a lot more. I didn't realize how many people asked me about technique, and what best person to ask about technique than our friends at PhotoGearFun. Phil, who you see here. Phil, say hello.
Hello.
Mickey's Magic, how are you? By the way, does this hat look familiar? Thank you very much again for the hat. So I believe it or not, so one of the biggest things, you know, that really people asked me about was pitfalls. So we did that last week. I literally I counted, there were about 15 different IMs, or rather messages about that. And this is there are 12 messages from smaller channels about technique. How do you film things? How do you stream? Not only film, taking pictures one, taking videos two, and live stream. Can we give you tips? So this is what it's about, to help you guys get better. And again, we got PhotoGearFun. And one of the questions, hold on, let me get the question. So Phil, there's a few questions that I'm gonna pose to you. My apologies, are gonna be on a hot seat.
That's okay. I'm fine with that.
You're gonna be in a hot seat for a little bit, because there's some questions by some of the smaller channels. So maybe that kind of kicks us off, if you don't mind.
Sure. Not at all.
So one of the questions was, when taking a picture and looking at an object, say, and then they put e.g. Disney Castle, what is the most important thing to adjust when taking a picture in the sunlight? We're starting with an easy one first.
Yeah.
So it's harder.
So the cameras today are actually pretty good in auto. So most people start out in auto. I've been doing photography for quite a few years, and I started out in auto, and there's nothing wrong with the auto modes. The problem is that you can only capture so much light, meaning if it's really, really bright out, then things are going to become what they call, sorry, my cat just wants to be in this, overexposed. And that's basically means, overexposed means you lose information. So it could be that the sun is overexposed, and sometimes that's okay. So I always say to try to expose for your subject, and that it's a little bit of an advanced kind of concept. But basically, if you're going to be in the auto mode, try to point your camera or have the middle of your camera viewfinder at the subject. And generally the cameras will do a good job of adjusting the light to that. So if you want to kind of talk about more advanced topics, we can get into that too, and kind of get into a manual mode, which means that you can adjust things like your shutter speed, sorry, and your aperture. And both of those will control the amount of light that gets into your camera. And you want to make sure that you're exposing for whatever you think is most important. So if it happens to be something that might be in the shadows, you might turn your exposure up. If it's something that is in the light, you might turn your exposure down. I do apologize. She will not stay out. She likes to be the center of attention.
I think a bunch of people said they want to see your cat. So if you don't mind, kind of show them or her.
Oh, yeah. Hold on one sec. Suki. She's a Siamese mix. And unlike many Siamese cats, she's very affectionate toward everybody. She especially likes being on camera for some reason. So that's Suki, the star of the show.
So everybody, we got a bunch of people that just hopped on. So thank you all very much for coming. Molly, how are you? Destination Storm. Dean from Dreamers Empire. Who else do I have? There's I also saw Vic. Vic, thank you. Juan, thank you very much for joining. So one of the things that they want to ask you is, as you know, majority of our partners, we do a lot of filming. And I would say, looking at the number of questions that we have, about 70% wants to know or want tip from us about filming, say at Disney or stuff like that. I'm going to ask you to go first, and then I'll give my little 3 cents or 2 cents.
Sure. So filming can be either very easy or very difficult. And these might sound like cop-out answers. They're not. I'll explain as we go along. But there are a lot of cameras today, like I'm going to probably show you a little bit about this, this new Canon camera, which has a really good auto mode and is actually geared towards maybe, let's say, vloggers who want to make it very easy just to be able to capture what's going on, not have to worry about exposure, shutter speed, aperture, all those different things that can be very technical. This is really designed to be a camera that you don't have to worry about the technical aspects of it, and it's got a flip-up screen. You just focus on pointing the camera where you want it to go, and this actually has a 40x zoom, and maybe we'll get into that a little bit. But it's an amazing little camera which I'm testing out. I've got a couple videos on it showing the video quality and kind of like a quick look. I'll be doing a comparison against another camera that has a 30x zoom, which again is designed to be fairly simple and easy to use. But you can make it really, really complicated, or you can make it really, really easy. And to me, it comes down to what are you comfortable with? And missing a shot is going to hurt you much more than having a shot that's not technically perfect, right? So if the light's a little bit off, your composure's a little bit off, it's not as important as possibly missing a shot while you're fiddling around with your camera trying to get the settings right. So I've been shooting video and shooting photography for a while. I'm comfortable with the cameras that I use to shoot photos and video, and that's the thing. Pick a camera, stick with it, and do what you're comfortable with while you're filming. right? So the most important thing is just getting the shot. It doesn't matter if it's overexposed, underexposed. If you don't get all the technical aspects correct, that's not going to be as bad as you completely missing the shot. So trust your auto mode to start, point the camera where you want it to be, right? And don't worry necessarily about all of the technical things. You can go crazy, and trust me, I know I'm a technical person by nature. I work in a technical field. I go crazy over the technical things sometimes, and that causes me to miss a shot, and I get really aggravated when that happens. So focus on just pointing the camera where you want to point the camera, telling the story that you want to tell, and let the camera do the work. These cameras are so good today, and they have such advanced technology in them. Processors that used to be in computers now are in our cameras and even our phones. So just let the camera do the work to start. Get comfortable with telling your story and your equipment, and then you can dive into kind of more technical, if you'd like to get into more technical settings.
That's awesome. That's all. You know what? I got to tell you, you made a great point, because it just keep filming. And one of the things that I kind of realized looking at all my videos, and one of the things that I took from someone who gave me an advice was just film. Even if it doesn't look good right now, just film. And that's what I've been doing. When I go to Disney and stuff like that, I'll just film. And I realize when I come back, I'm like, hey, I actually like this video. And at the time when I was filming, I really didn't like it. And just to give you an idea, I actually use about 10% of the video stock that I get. 90% I will not use. But within that 10%, it actually snippets from almost everywhere. So it's a really, really great advice, from you, Phil. So for all of you out there, if you're filming in Disney or anywhere, just keep filming. You don't know what you're going to come up across, and when you see it again on a computer, it's totally different from looking at it from a smaller camera lens or view. Is that correct?
Yeah, it really is. And there's an old saying that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That applies to video as well, obviously, right? If your camera's not rolling, you're not going to get that video. So we have memory cards that are huge these days, right? And especially if you're shooting in 1080 p, you can put a lot of video on one single card. So just shoot. And yeah, it takes more time sometimes when you're editing, but you'll get better at that. You'll get better at discerning what is going to be usable. But again, don't miss the shot. Take that opportunity, and if it's bad, you just delete it. It's not really any cost to you. It's not like when we used to shoot film where you had to develop it and look at it. You shoot it. If you don't like it, you toss it. So it might take a little bit of your time, but definitely keep shooting. That's the key.
Here's a question that, believe it or not, out of the 12 questions that I have, 4 of them actually ties to this question here. And I think this is going to be a really hard one. And I think it's going to be very, very useful to all of our smaller channels, because as you know, when we go out, we don't just carry one camera, right? So here's the main question. The question is, what would you suggest from a technique perspective, and if there's any difference, filming from a DSLR to a ready-to-shoot camera to an iPhone or a camera phone?
Yeah, another great question. I think it's fairly easy. So I own a lot of different cameras. I've got DSLRs. Last time I kind of showed some of the cameras that I own. I've got big cameras. I've got small cameras. I've got cameras that are difficult to use. I've got cameras that are easier to use. Grab the camera that has the capabilities that you want, that you are most comfortable using, or is the easiest to use. So that could be your iPhone. I just got a new phone, so I'm not really comfortable with it yet, but I've got the Samsung S9. It's supposed to have a phenomenal camera. I was at a concert the other night, took some pictures. It does really nice. It takes great pictures, right? I mean, we're fairly close, luckily. But it's, again, I can't stress the importance of finding something that's easy to use. The G7X II or Mark II, the kind of point and shoot cameras where you just turn it on. Again, this Canon camera is kind of a little brother to that, right? It's less expensive, but you turn it on, you put it on video mode, and you just shoot. You've got the flip up screen, and you just point the camera to where you want it to point. Again, it's got a 40x zoom, so you can zoom in. You can get really far out, so you can get wide shots, and you can also get really, really close shots, obviously, with 40x zoom. And I have videos on my channel that show you the zoom range and show you a kind of videos that I've taken with this camera. But find something that is light, that you can probably carry multiple batteries, because batteries are important these days, right? DSLRs are big, the batteries are big, they're expensive to buy. You have to carry lenses with those, right? This has a lens built in, so it's got a 40x lens. So I'll just show you kind of this. That's as big as this camera gets when the lens is fully extended, right? Now I've got some cameras that have lenses that are, you know, a foot long or whatever, and then it retracts when you turn it off. So really the key is, I would suggest anybody starting out, first of all, if you've got a cell phone that is less than a couple of years old, start with that. You know, the iPhones are great. The Android phones, a lot of the Android phones are great. The Samsung phones, I used to use an LG phone. Start with that and get comfortable with just being in front of the camera. I'm still not completely comfortable being in front of the camera. I don't vlog a lot. I do a lot of sit-down videos. I do a lot of technical videos. So I kind of have to, other than today where I don't have to, this is kind of off the top of my head, I don't have to remember stuff. It's difficult sometimes to be in front of the camera and try to remember things and try to have your personality come out. But focus on just getting the shot, and then work on your camera presence, work on your storytelling. But you don't have to jump right in and buy a big camera. In fact, most people, a lot of people in the industry, even photographers, pro photographers, are moving away from the big, bulky DSLRs to just these smaller, like this is another, you know, another small mirrorless camera that does have a flip up screen and has lenses that you can change, but is very, very light. This whole thing weighs less than a pound. So this is the Sony A5100. A $550 camera. And again, it's expensive, I understand that, but for a camera with these capabilities, it's not really that expensive. And that's the point. You have a phone, you paid $1,000 for the phone or whatever it is, start using that. I mean, look at guys like Adam the Woo. If you're familiar with the Disney community, a lot of these guys, Justin Scard, started out with their cell phones, right? Start there, learn your craft, learn to tell your story, figure out who you want to be and what story you want to tell, and then take it from there. I wouldn't say, unless you have the money, if you have the money and you're looking to buy a camera, then certainly dive in and do that, and it will give you better quality video. But also make sure you focus on the audio. Audio is really important. People underestimate audio and the value of audio. So you might buy a GoPro, and the video quality is great in a GoPro. The audio quality is not good at all, right? So you would be better served by buying, you know, one of these $400 smaller cameras, the same price as a GoPro, that has pretty good audio. And I've got a little fur cover that kind of helps with the wind noise on this. But basically, the microphone on this camera is surprisingly good, and the audio will be much better, and the video will be comparable, if not better. So just do your research. Check out channels like mine. Not a shameless plug, but there are a lot of tech reviewers that do reviews, and check it out. There's so much information available. But I would say don't feel compelled, especially to buy a DSLR, because one, they're big. They can be confusing. They're not necessarily made to be easy, except for the Canon. With the Canon SL2, which is a great little camera, I think it's probably around $600. And again, I understand that this is expensive, but in the world of cameras, if you look it up, you'll find that it's really not that expensive. It has a mode that really just helps you through. So it tells you, you know, if you want a blurry background or if you want to capture action, it will actually guide you through that and make the settings for you. So some of the modern DSLRs, the smaller ones, are making it easier to use. But I started with my cell phone in photography and for video.
So I'm gonna give, I guess, you know, this will help answer a lot of the questions or someone's comments here. So Destination Storm says she has a really, I guess, a really good gear, really big and heavy. She's not going to vlog. And then there's also Dean also asked about stabilization, right, for a camera. And then, by the way, Captain Akron, thank you very much for coming. So one of the things that I've kind of realized was this. I'm not a really great picture taker, but I will use tools to help me get better. And one of the things that I do cheat with is this. You see this here, the little handle? All I have to do is just turn around, turn it, turn it. See how quick that was? And this little thing here is $6 on Amazon. It's all aluminum. So if you guys want a little more information on it, I put some information below the I guess the stream. It's only $6, like I said. It's that simple. And what you will find is that if you look at this, you're holding it, your arm is almost straight, right? And this is a scientific part that will keep you from getting too tired. You would be going straight versus doing this. Look at this. This is a 90-degree. All the weights here instead of coming down the center of the mass. This will give you a lot more, I guess, ability to hold your camera up, if that makes any sense. And I've also realized that when you're walking this way, a lot of the shock goes through your arm and it's less bouncy. So to answer Dean's question, I actually use gimbals. So this is actually for my iPhone. This is the Osmo. And I also have the Zhiyun one for my DSLR or any of my other cameras. But I think from a native, I guess, bounce perspective, from understanding how to save yourself from all those bounces. Phil, do you have any cameras that are really good with stabilization?
Yeah, I do. And I'll say that in vlogging, stabilization I think is much more important than it would be for, you know, something like I'm doing. Or there's some techniques you can use, like having your camera strap and holding your camera strap out and then having kind of a little bit of tension on your arms. If you're going to be doing, let's say, maybe like 5-minute videos where you're shooting something that's not you, there's some techniques that you can use. But Panasonic makes phenomenal image stabilization. And this is a Panasonic camera here, which doesn't have, it has pretty good stabilization. This is another $400 point and shoot camera that shoots 4K with a flip out screen. I have videos on this. I took it to the zoo, and these two cameras are perfect for those types of things where you're doing hybrid, where you want to do video and shoot stills. You have that big zoom. But the Panasonic G85 or GX85 has phenomenal stabilization. I think the G85, again, I understand these prices are expensive if you think about, you know, versus hamburgers or whatever, but in the camera world, they're not that bad. So the G85, I think you can probably get it with a lens that has stabilization built in for around maybe $600 or so. And it uses something called dual IS or dual image stabilization. And that will allow you to use stabilization in the body. So when you move the camera around, inside of the camera is the sensor, which is what captures the light basically. And that sensor actually moves. So it compensates for your movements like a gimbal does, really. And then the lens itself has stabilization in it as well. So the Panasonic G85 with the 12 to 60 lens has dual IS, and the stabilization is phenomenal. I mean, unbelievably almost gimbal-like stabilization, but there's nothing like a gimbal, right? So you have a phone gimbal and you have a gimbal for your larger cameras, and they're great. They can't be beat. However, it comes back to convenience again, and especially if you're traveling. Kenny, I know you travel. It's difficult to bring those sometimes, right? The smaller ones for your phone, a little bit easier. But I've got the Zhiyun Crane gimbal as well for my DSLRs, and that thing it comes with its own case, and it's heavy and it's not convenient. To be honest with you, I have one of these two cameras with me at any time, and if I want to just do quick video, I grab one of these two cameras. Even though I have other cameras that are technically better, I just don't use them because they're not convenient. And you'll find that, especially when you're vlogging, it's all about convenience. When you're in a studio set up like I am here, you know, I've got a big, not big, but a full frame mirrorless camera here that I'm filming on. I've got another camera over here that are, you know, fairly large cameras that I wouldn't necessarily use to travel with and to vlog with. But I can't overstate this. it comes down to convenience and usability. And if you've got something that you can fit in your pocket and it is always there with you, you're going to get, again, you're going to get great video with this. Stabilization is really good, but from a practical perspective, a technical perspective, nothing beats a gimbal for stabilization. You just have to figure out what is most important. And really, people, I think, will deal with some amount of shake in your video if you're vlogging. Again, if they have become, you know, your subscribers and they like the stories that you're telling and they like you kind of as a person, you know, as a product, if you will, I think there's much more tolerance for that than somebody that they might just start to watch and see that it's shaky. So stabilization is definitely important. You just have to think about the practicality.
So, Meg, just to give you an idea, you asked the question, is gimbals worth it? I think they are worth it, but just as Phil said, it's hard to carry that thing around. Just to give you an idea, you see this camera here? This is my 4K camera that I use, and this is quite heavy. Now, imagine if I have a full Zion, which is in the other room. You're gonna double the weight, okay? The battery itself, just to give you an idea, the battery itself, it's pretty. These are big batteries, and the motors in there are big. And yeah, Phil's gonna show it to you. It comes with a case.
This is the case that it comes with, and it is aluminum.
Look at the size of that.
But this doesn't include the batteries, so there's another part here where you put 2 batteries in there. This thing it weighs, I don't know how much it weighs, 3 or 4 pounds itself. And if you have a bigger camera, you need a gimbal like this because the motors are more powerful. With your cell phone, obviously doesn't weigh much. The more the camera that you want to stabilize weighs, the bigger the motors that you're going to need on the gimbal. And this is just, again, if I'm doing something around town or something that in my studio, it's great. But for traveling, you just have to consider practicality.
Yeah, so one positive thing about that is I've actually used that in Disneyland, and that battery, oh my God, that just hauls and hauls. I was charging, I was on the same time charging my cell phone, and it lasted the whole day. So you know, to answer your question, Meg, it's worth it. Just as Phil said, if you are willing to take the time, carry it around, putting it together. And here's a problem. When you put that, it's not just a screw on, right? You actually have to calibrate it so it's balanced. That thing takes forever for me. I'm a beginner. I've only used this 6 times, and I'm still kind of getting used to it. But the thing is, it's not that expensive if you look at it, if you continue to use it and you want to grow it. But the question to you that you should ask is this: are you going to be using something big like this, or even I have the GX7 as well to put on there? Are you going to use those as your primary? Because if you think about it, there's actually some people that will opt for this little thing, the Osmo one, for your iPhone. So I have 128 gigs on this, right? So that means I could put a whole lot of video on here. So I could theoretically go without, but I kind of realized one thing, that the 4K capability on this is not as good as my Lumix. So this is the reason why I carry it. So the question you have to ask yourself is, you know, Meg, is that worth your time? Is that worth your money? Will you continuously use it?
Yeah, and that's a great point, Kenny. Trying to balance a camera on a gimbal, even if you use the same camera and the same lenses, it's a pain to keep it PG, right? That's one of the main reasons why I don't use them. But if you're going to use a cell phone, we talked about using a cell phone, and those cell phone gimbals are super simple, right? You basically slide the phone in, and you might have to move your phone just a little bit one way or another, but they're super simple and easy to balance. And I don't know if folks here, probably some folks watch Resort TV 1, right? And they're probably live streaming now. They're going to be live streaming later. Josh uses, and Jenna, they use a cell phone and that gimbal. And if you look at their footage, it's really good. So they actually have videos on their channel as well where they use their cell phone, and others do as well. So if you're going to use your cell phone and you want a gimbal, and they're relatively inexpensive compared to the larger gimbals, maybe $100 or $120 or something like that. Again, I know that that's expensive, but in the world of technology, it's not that bad for your camera. So I would say if you're super concerned about stable footage and you want to get good quality 4K, start with your cell phone, assuming your cell phone shoots 4K. Or if you don't care about 4K, 1080 is great as well. I know a lot of people vlog in 1080. Buy a gimbal for your cell phone. It's light. It's easy to transport. It should last, 4 to 6 hours or whatever. So it should last you probably a day of shooting. So really, if somebody asked me today, I want to be a vlogger, I want to break into the business, I've got a cell phone, I've got an iPhone 6 or 7, I've got an Android, whatever, Galaxy S8, I want stable footage and I want decent audio, stick with your cell phone, buy a gimbal. And on your cell phone, you can buy a microphone if you're concerned about sound. That's great. That a lapel microphone, or a lav mic they call it, which you can clip on to your clothes somewhere. You can hide it if you want to, and plug it into your phone, and the sound is phenomenal. But even without that, the cell phones these days have pretty good sound.
So Destination Storm says, my GX7 is my primary. I can't imagine holding so much weight walking through the park or wherever we are all day, right? So really the question is to you is so for me, I carry that big thing because I like filming in 4K. Yeah. To me, I think it's future proofing. So I don't have to worry about how many video cameras does everybody have. I could look back over there in some of my old bin. I must have, I think, 5 or 6 different formats of cameras now that's just sitting there, right?
Right.
So for me, I'm future proofing, and to me, it's heavy, yes, but a lot of times you have to think about it. What's important? Like GX7, the Mark II that I have, it doesn't film in 4K. So it's good for now, but going into the future, I don't know. Because if you want to compete in the 4K space, which if you look at my videos, a lot of these where I'm rating on TubeBuddy, I'm actually rated pretty high up there in the 4K space. So this is the reason why I do what I do. So a lot of these, like technique, a lot of tools that you will use, guys, it really depends on how important certain things are, like future proofing, right? The type of camera. Are you willing to build a little bit of muscle to hold on to this big giant thing? And Phil just showed you how big that gimbal was. Could you imagine this whole big thing coming down here, and then you have a big servo motor that comes through here? I mean, that's a lot of weight, especially if you're talking about filming some of those parades, which could be 20, 30 minutes. Yeah. Oh my God. Your arm's gonna be dropping.
And there are times you just want to be discreet as well, right? You don't want to draw attention to yourself. You come with that gimbal and you've got a microphone on it and you look like you're pro. You might be approached by security at Disney or theme parks saying, you can't shoot there. But even if you just want to be discreet, if you're in the grocery store or in your car or whatever, something that is small and portable, again, I don't know. I find myself going back to when I go to Disney and I'm going in November, I take basically 2 or 3 cameras. This time I'm going to take my A6500, which is a smaller, let me grab it here. It's a smaller camera, not nearly as big as a DSLR. This is a pretty good lens for low light on it. So I'm going to take this with me. I'm going to take this little Canon and my cell phone, and that's it. So the Canon's going to be what I use to do my vlogging, and I'm going to probably have this on my channel too. This will probably be part of like my review for this Canon camera, which I'm working on, and doing low light rides with this and the lens that I have. It looks really, really good. So I'm going to take those 2 cameras, and that's pretty much it. Although, again, I do have access to and own a lot of different cameras, but it comes down to, again, I'm going to be in the park for 8 or 10 hours. There's a lot of possible weight there, right? And you get sweaty carrying the camera bag and those types of things. So you want to keep your weight down as much as you can. And those 2 cameras for me are more than going to get the job done. And you'll see the videos on my channel if you follow me or subscribe that I'll be doing hopefully a lot of low light rides, and you can just see the difference that a camera, again, a small camera like this with a good lens is as good, or in this case better, because it's more practical than the big DSLRs that have the bigger lenses.
For those of you who want to see the Osmo in motion, so I did a stream in Disneyland. It's called Pixar Play. So I actually put you guys on using the iPhone, and I used the servo to do a transition. So if you want to see the smoothness of the transition on the Osmo, you could see it there. I just sat there and just kind of used the motor to kind of go up and down. So it's really cool. So, by the way, really quick, guys, if you haven't hit the like button, please do so now. So this way, kind of give Phil and me an idea, how much, how often we want to do this, if it's useful. So thank you all very much. Phil, is there anything else that you want to kind of give in terms of technique-wise? Like I said, I cheat. I use a lot of tools. I think using these tools helped me become a better photographer / videographer. And I don't have to worry about, different things like lighting, shading, movement, all the things. And again, this is the reason why I love this little thing, is because, I could just put it on top of a Disney garbage can, start filming. No movement, so. Do you have anything else that you want to kind of tell our guests about?
Yeah, people use that term cheating. I don't think there's any such thing as cheating, right? It's not like we're in college and we're going to take a test and our professors are going to be standing over there watching everything that we do. Technology has advanced such that we should be able to take advantage of it, and don't feel like you're any less of a storyteller, vlogger, a photographer, videographer, because you're using what's available in these cameras. I say take advantage of everything that's available to you, right? So when I do my video, I don't have the most steady hands. And by the way, I primarily started in photography. I consider myself to be a fairly accomplished photographer. I've been published in magazines. I've got some images on some of the larger stock photography sites. I sell images. So video is newer to me than photography, but the same concepts and principles apply. Use what's available to you. Use your technology, but don't use it as a crutch. So learn the basics. So when you're filming, try to think about composition and think about what just looks good to you. If it looks good to you, it's probably going to look good to others as well, right? Don't think about, as a photographer, sometimes I get caught up in what are other photographers going to like? And that's a very different crowd, and it's very hard to please. It's a fickle crowd. So forget about any of that. Look at something that you think is appealing to you. It's probably going to be appealing to your viewers as well. And just try to keep things steady, right? So if you're holding, you might look silly, right? But if you keep your camera against your body and just kind of move in these ways, right? So rather than just holding it up and doing this. And another thing is shoot as wide as you can, because when you're shooting wider, meaning more zoomed out, you don't have as much shake as if you're zoomed in. When you start zooming in, the field of view is smaller, and any shake is going to be magnified by your zoom, basically. So maybe 20 times the magnification. So if you're completely zoomed out, the shake will be less noticeable than when you're zoomed in. But just try to, again, if you're not concerned about how you look, and sometimes in the park that might be a concern, right? But keeping your body, using your body kind of as, you talked about it too, kind of as almost a shock absorber, and turn stabilization on if you have it in your camera. And there are things that you can do if you're using editing software to try to correct some of that. But I would say initially, don't be as concerned with the technicalities of that, but try to keep two hands on the camera, right? And just try to keep it stable. And if you're using your phone, same principles basically apply, but the phones these days have unbelievable stabilization. It's easier to stabilize the phones, I think, than it is a lot of these other cameras. But and for photography, at some point, if folks are interested in doing photography talk, I would love to do that. I know that we're kind of talking about video here. A lot of folks are interested in YouTube and video, but if you're not going to shoot in auto, learn about some simple rules. So there's this rule called the 180-degree shutter rule. And again, I don't want to try to get too technical, but basically, if you're going to be in some sort of manual mode, you want to have your shutter speed basically at twice whatever your frame rate is. The most cameras will shoot at 30 frames per second, or you can shoot at 24 frames per second. So if you're shooting at 30 frames per second and you're in some sort of manual mode, the general rule is that your shutter speed should be 1/60th of a second. And then, so there are three things that kind of control the way you gather light. It's your shutter speed. Again, we can talk about this more if there's interest. Your shutter speed, your aperture, and your ISO, or your sensitivity to light. So you can adjust any of those three if you're in a manual mode. In auto mode, the camera kind of does that for you. So if you get your shutter speed to be what is considered to be correct, you can adjust your aperture and either open it or close it. And aperture is kind of like the iris in your eye, right? It will open up, you can let more light in, or close down to let less light in. And you can adjust that to kind of control the way your video looks. And for kind of a cinematic look, all the movies that we see are shot at 24 frames per second, or 24p, some people might say. And then a lot of cameras will shoot at 30 frames per second. That's kind of for normal speed video. And then if you want to do any high speed stuff and slow it down, or you want to do slow motion, you can shoot at, some cameras shoot at 60 frames per second or 120. And again, if you're using an auto mode, the camera will do a decent job of adjusting. But if not, just basically whatever your frame rate is, if you're going to adjust your shutter speed, you should make it twice what your frame rate, or half, sorry. So if you're shooting at twice, sorry. So if you're shooting at 120 frames per second to do slow motion, your shutter speed should be 1/250th. Again, not to get too technical, but learn the equipment that you're using. And if you're interested in getting better technically, there's a wealth of information out there on the internet about, you know, the technicalities of shooting video.
That's awesome. So one of the things that I cannot stress, because there's a lot of people, I see their videos, they're saying my arm hurts, or, you know, especially the streamers. Here's the thing. One of the things that I've noticed is that they'll hold it like this, one hand. And again, if you're looking at all the weight is here, right? You only have one wrist. What Phil actually alluded to was a great point. Hold it with two hands. If you hold it with two hands, if you think about this, all that weight isn't on one wrist. You're not going to get super tired because of that then, okay? So that's very important. This is the reason why this little thing is more important as well, because it distributes all the weight down straight instead of you being at 90 degrees, where, remember, this is your least powerful point, your joint. And if you put the pressure straight down to your arm instead of joint, you could actually hold on to these equipment longer. Okay. So I think, so those were the questions that most of my, I guess, the smaller channel asked. So I'm going to ask you to see if you have any final, talk or decision or comments that you want to give our family here. And let's, and then I'll just close this out, and then we'll talk maybe sometime next week.
Sounds good. Yeah. So I would say again, and I said this last time, it might sound like a broken record if you saw both of these, but I think it's important to say that tell the story that you want to tell, right? There are a lot of Disney vloggers out there. Everybody's seen, if you watch any of the vlogs, everybody's seen all the attractions. Be you, tell your story, put a personal spin on that, and try to do something different. From a technology perspective, utilize what you are comfortable utilizing. Start, we kind of all start out crawling, right? And then we kind of pull ourselves up and we walk a little bit, and then we start running. It's similar in the technology world. If you're a technical person and you want to get into technology, great. But I recommend, and I'm kind of not practicing what I preach here, picking a camera or a tool, in this case it would be a camera, and stick with it. Learn that inside and out. It's very important that you know if you need to change something, how to do it in a second, in a split second, because if you don't, you could possibly miss the shot. It's certainly true in photography for sure, and it's definitely true when you're shooting video as well. But don't get caught up in the technology and having things be technically perfect. But I will say, having decent quality video, which any cell phone today will shoot 1080p, 4K, and again, 4K. I shoot 4K, Kenny, like you said, because it future proofs, and it also, if you're into editing, it allows you to be able to take that 4K video, and if you want to deliver in 1080p, you can crop. So you can take, without losing any quality, you can change your composition. You can change the way that that scene looks, and it really does give you some flexibility. Yes, you have to have a faster computer, you know, and it takes more space, but that's something that you have to decide. And starting out at 1080p, I think is perfect. And again, most phones will do that. It's easier to edit, but make sure as well that you have good sound. And I'm sure everybody's experienced where we're excited to see a video, we click onto it, and the video looks awesome, but we can't hear what they're saying. The sound's muffled, or it sounds tinny, or it's just inaudible. You're not going to watch that video. So video, certainly in the YouTube world, is important. Having clear video at 1080p, even with, you know, the kind of a 5-year-old cell phone, the video quality is going to be good enough for YouTube, and maybe in some cases better than good enough. Make sure that you have good audio, and that might just mean not putting your hand over your microphone, you know, or, you know, when you're shooting, just make sure that you don't cover the mic. Doing things like this. This is a they call it a wind jammer, but basically that will protect, or kind of at least defer a lot of the wind noise that you have, and it kind of just absorbs it. So little things like that you can do to get a better quality sound. But I would say, again, don't get caught up necessarily in technology. I do, and I love it, but that's what I do. That's kind of my hobby. But strictly speaking, to create good videos, you need a cell phone. If you're concerned about stabilization, a gimbal, and then just make sure that you have good audio. And you could buy an inexpensive microphone that, you know, might be $10 or $12. So you have your cell phone. That's kind of a cost that you've absorbed. If you want a gimbal, it's $120, $130, and then a microphone might be $10 or $20. So for $150 or so, you've got a setup that will be more than adequate for YouTube today for 1080p and even 4K. And just get out there and again, I'm a little awkward in front of the camera. If you watch some of my videos, especially my earlier ones, you'll see that. Get comfortable in front of the camera. Get comfortable vlogging, because it's very difficult. I'm still not comfortable vlogging. I don't do it enough to get comfortable. But when people look at me, I feel kind of weird, right? You have to get past that, especially if you're going to be a vlogger, obviously. And just, even if you're at a grocery store or whatever, get out there, get in front of the camera. Even if you're not going to use the video on YouTube, practice. And that's the way you become better, right? Same thing with photography. Just get out there and practice. Shoot 1,000 shots and look at different things and try things different. Don't do the same thing, expect different results, right? The old definition of insanity. Try different things, experiment, be experimental, and try it, and even put it out on your YouTube channel, right? Because you may think you know what your audience likes, but especially when you're starting out, experiment a little, do different things, try different things, and you'll find who you are and who your subscribers and your audience actually likes. But don't get bogged down in technology.
Very, very good advice. I think you know, majority of the people, you know, if they hear it, they'll really understand. So one of the things that I did to overcome my blogging was, you know, one of the ladies who actually showed me how to kind of really use my camera. She said this: pretend it's your best friend. Talk to your best friend. And I kind of realized, you know what? Let me try it. And it actually helped me. Eventually, after like about a month of repetition, it helped. Like right now, if you look at my earlier, I guess, streams, I was going humming the whole time, you know. But now I'm not. So I get it. So those are definitely very good advice. By the way, little Laurel, thank you very much for coming, always supporting. So before we leave, I'm going to close this out with a little bit of my take. Just as Phil said, don't worry about other people, because majority of the time, if you're in the park, they're worrying about their own stuff. They don't care what you're doing, right? and know your equipment. And above all, I think one of the things is that thank you all for being a part of our community. I truly love our community. And one of the things that I've always said to all my friends, and I see all of you as my friends, is this. We're part of a community. It's great. We help each other. We love each other. But one of the things that's more important is this. Make sure you give a smile to your family and friends and people you don't love, or don't know, rather, not love, but you don't know, out there once a day. Make someone's day at least once a day. And you will see how much of a difference you will be treated and how beautiful the world will be around you. So, everybody, thank you all very much. Thanks to Phil. If you don't know his channel, please go there and check it out. A lot of really cool advices and reviews. So we will talk soon some other time. And thank you all very much for coming. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.